Let's rock today. Get some of this too.
It's gonna make you talk funny.
I already talk funny.
Oh. Gives me anxiety opening up and Zoom being the first thing there.
I'm just like, hey, what are you doing? I'm being on a podcast. What are you doing?
I do, man. I'm really like, I'm gonna leave Zoom on someday. That's okay.
Drink of the day today is the Hop Lark sparkling hop tea.
Sparkling
hop tea. It's from Colorado. I don't know why I'm talking like that. It's fun to say though.
Okay, this is the non-alcoholic stuff. It's like non-alcoholic beer.
Better be. Yeah.
Well,
I was like, yeah, they didn't. Yeah, it is. Okay.
It's really ruining the point of beer in my mind.
Well, this one has caffeine in it, so.
Okay. Hop tea, man.
Yeah.
Hops are not that good unless they're juiced up with some ABV.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, my father figures like how he drinks these hop waters now whenever we're on the boat and going out and stuff. It's because he doesn't drink. He hasn't drank for like 13 years.
Yeah.
But there's definitely something to it whenever you're out in a public social situation and people are drinking. Like, if you just have something in your hand, it doesn't matter what it is.
I think you're more alive. You're more social.
Well, you're like doing the same thing as everyone. You're like part of the group, part of the event, part of the activity.
Yeah.
But you don't have to put alcohol in it.
Do you think you act a little bit tipsy while you're doing that, though? If you ever observed somebody as a third party, the alien looking at the room, do you think they act differently? The drunk people wouldn't notice.
I think the situation is as much a contributing factor to people acting differently than it is to the alcohol itself. Yes, the alcohol will amplify it, but also if you just put people in a lower lit situation where they have nothing else they have to do, and you turn the music up loud enough to where they don't hear all the weird thoughts in their head and they just have good friends in front of them.
Interesting.
They act a little different.
It's like environmental triggers. Have you ever heard of the environmental triggers? There was some study, and I hate studies because I don't trust them most of the time, but at least apocryphally, there was a study for alcohol drinking at different times of the day, at different times of the week. And they learned that usually people are environmentally triggered for different times drinking alcohol. It's like a Friday evening. My body is going to start producing more enzymes before I even start drinking alcohol. It's going to start producing enzymes preparing for that alcohol, and it will act differently just because that's the environment and rhythm I've put it in.
Wow, that's wild. It's awesome.
I guess so.
Awesome in the sense that our body like prepares for what we want to do.
Yeah.
A little bit, it's not disturbing, but it's a little bit alarming when it's like, oh, I'm getting ready for you to go drinking.
It is.
Oh.
It is.
Yeah? What do you got to prepare for, bro?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that's what you hear alcoholics every once in a while talk about how they don't feel normal unless they're drunk. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I wonder if you reach a point where your body's just producing so much of those enzymes all the time that it reverses your state and you need alcohol in order to nullify those enzymes, right? To get them to bind to something to get out of your body. Like you need the alcohol for those to go away.
Yeah.
That would be a problem. I don't know. Maybe we're solving addiction right now. Most likely. Let's not put that one out there.
Probably not.
All right. Do you have a topic? What do you got?
I don't have I wanted to take some moments to review. This is episode 4. So what we'll have right here. And I think looking at the YouTube statistics, I saw we have over 30 hours of total watch time.
Heck yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Between the shorts and the 3.5 hours of video we've posted.
Should we sell to Netflix?
This documentary brought to you by Netflix.
Check it out.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Our new studio, right? We've just made so much money that we had this new studio off of our first 3 episodes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It reminds me of Between Two Ferns.
Oh,
do you know that?
Absolutely. Let me ask you awkward and
weird,
damning questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what it reminds me of. So we could sell to Netflix. But anyway, continue. So you've been looking at the stats.
Yeah, 30 hours, 25 total downloads of the podcast itself. I know we have probably 700 followers on TikTok. It's doing great.
Yeah, TikTok blew up.
Instagram a little harder. Y'all are a tougher audience. Or I think maybe 100. And numbers aren't everything. It's more of a feedback to say,
are we doing something
is this
right?
relevant to anybody?
Yeah. Are we doing
if
something?
nobody responded to it at all, it's like, ugh. There is some value in making people feel a way.
Yeah.
And
seen.
I mean, yes, and I also mean it's valuable to make people feel good or bad about something whenever it's coming from you. As in, it's better to make people feel a certain way about you than to have them not feel about you at all.
That's 100%.
There's definitely ways of talking and going about life where you can
coast.
Yeah. And some people want to do that. That's fine. It's not in my goal set or my direction I'm going. I want to feel something.
You're ready to be great.
I like it when people make me feel some kind of way. Yeah. Ray Dalio. Look, I'm going to get this quote right.
Hey, Ray Dalio. He remembers a guy.
Here we go. Now, I'm going to butcher his exact wording.
Sure.
And the book, Principles by Ray Dalio. Quoted to me by my brother originally.
Okay.
Yeah, Richard Robichaux. Shout out. He said it something like, better to live a life making people feel a certain way about you than to never make them feel it at all. And it's not my goal to like do things to make people feel a certain way, but it's kind of exciting to know that I'm at least looking in a direction, going down a path, exploring topics that are relevant to other people. It's fun because I would hope that whatever I do with my life or my time is also productive or helpful for other people in some sort of way.
Yeah.
So that's cool to see that there is some sort of engagement or resonance with what we're doing.
I think the only reason that resonance exists is because you and I make a point, and many people don't, to be out in the community. Right? You can't, most of our conversations subconsciously are probably just reflections of other conversations we've had.
Yep.
Oftentimes people justify being in their home alone by themselves where they can go solve the world's problems in a corner in the closet or something in the dark. And what they end up doing is coming up with thoughts, ideas, concepts that don't touch base with anybody else in reality because they're not out in reality.
Where two or three are gathered, there I am.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just you. Could be real, could be right.
50-50.
Could be just a black hole of meaninglessness.
So I think that's definitely what resonates with people. While we're on this just quick episode 4 review, have you had people reach out to you that you were totally shocked that watched this thing?
One? Yeah. It wasn't super shocking. I didn't know they were watching anything that I did, though.
Interesting.
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had 2 that I was just genuinely surprised, and I was like, oh, wow. Like, would have never guessed. Would have never guessed.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't know about you, sometimes I get lost in the concept that the things I have to say actually just don't matter. Like, they're just like, whatever. I very much envision myself being that guy coming up with random ideas in the dark corner that nobody really cares to hear or think about. So it was interesting to see there were some people that were like, oh, hey, that was cool. Good work. You know?
Yeah. This might just be the progression of being the guy that comes up with the ideas in the dark corner. And this is the next process that you're supposed to go through.
That's possible.
You have these ideas and theories. Why don't we practice them?
Yep.
Let's see if they have any merit. Let's see if they make any sense. Let's see.
Push them out there.
Yeah. Question for you, because I have my own answer for this. How much of these have you watched back? Or
0.
what have you gotten out of watching like the shorts of yourself or anything?
The shorts are cool. I do like the shorts, and I watch the shorts. I have not watched any of the episodes full through.
Okay.
But that's because we've talked about this, or I guess we haven't talked about this. If anybody watching this doesn't read the Medium posts that go along with these, I'm blogging along as we produce these. I don't like watching myself. I don't. It's a icky, weird feeling, and so I would much prefer just like I love promoting it. I love pushing it out there because I want other people to see, engage, give us feedback. But I do not like watching myself. So I can tell you, I haven't really gotten anything from it. I feel better with it out there, though.
Okay.
I think it's something that's now out of us and into the world, right? Normally it's just our little bubble talking back and forth. And a lot of this stuff we've talked about together a couple times. So it's not like it's new to us.
Yeah. Prior to coming on screen with all this, we did develop some sort of agreement and working relationship on topics and ways of thinking.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
And coming to the table with ideas and things to talk about. What about you though? So have you watched it back? What are you learning? What are you doing? I assume you have, if the question came up.
Yeah. Being the person that edits them, I'm
yeah. It's
intimately familiar with all the details of how we talk and how we present ideas, and introspectively it's really made me criticize and consider the words that are coming out of my mouth when they're coming out, how often and in what cadence. Oh yeah. The amount of so's, likes, and well this and uhs that come out of my mouth in the middle of those great clips that we smash together. Oh.
That bugs you.
Virtual reality versus reality concept. Let's go back to that a little bit. I'm going to say social media, the content is like virtual reality.
Okay.
Experiencing virtual reality. Like the people doing the things in the content are living their real lives.
Yeah.
But the content on the platform is virtual reality if I'm sitting there scrolling through it.
Absolutely.
I read way quicker than I can talk out loud.
Mm-hmm.
The content on social media is built to fit the narrative of how quickly we can consume information.
Yeah. Not produce.
So it's deceptive in a sense because I hear these great thought out thoughts and well articulated and well presented thoughts thinking that I should also be talking that way on a normal basis. Which like right now, this is very hard for me to do without going, and so and like, and all this. Yeah. Quite the correction in my head right now. But it made me consider that, which I was quite excited about really, because I was like, oh, well, I always thought chopping up the stuff wasn't being authentic. But it's not about diminishing authenticity or seeming smarter. It's about conforming these long form pieces of content into things that are more we can
digestible.
Read. Yeah. In a live conversation, I'm never going to get hung up on the so's, the ums, the wells, because I'm in my real life. When I'm reading, if there were so's, ums, and dots everywhere in the book, I would get annoyed. I'd throw it down. I'd quit. Because my brain is like, where are we going? So that was just interesting learning.
And that's a practice thing, too.
From the practice.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that in practice, those things go away. I think a good example, here's something that I just like light bulb of this week. Okay. I tweeted this for a while now. I've been handwriting Warren Buffett's shareholder letters. Okay. I have a whole book of just me with a pen. I've gone through several pens, handwriting these bad boys. I started in the most recent years, 2021, 2020, 2019. And I was blown away with how brilliant he sounded and the eloquence with which he wrote and the ideas that he was putting out. I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy's, I see why he's the Michael Jordan of investing. I got nothing on this.
Yeah.
It was 2 days ago. So I got down to like 2009. It was 2 days ago that I was like, forget this. I'm going to go to the first ones. So I went to 1957. In 1957, Warren Buffett is 28 years old, 27, 28 years old. He's our age at the end of 1957.
Yeah.
And I started doing that one. Complete chump. Absolutely. It was like a totally different person. I mean, he's not a complete chump, but it was not the same. And I was like, oh my gosh. It's a practice game. Like you can see the value of compounding wisdom over the time of 1957 to 2021, right? And that's what this will be for us, is like, we'll look back on those first episodes and see the likes, ohs, so, and we'll make fun of it a little bit, and other people will probably never see it. But by the time people are actually really watching the things that we're saying, we'll be putting out content like what you just talked about, the ones that are so smoothly placed out and the ideas that are just crisp and hit you right between the ears. So it was an interesting learning lesson. It's funny you bring that up.
Yes, quite interesting, and a little bit like the veil we talked about, where see Warren Buffett, I hear how he speaks today, and I think Warren Buffett's always been that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because
he has it.
Because looking at today, we can't magically see also all the past and how he changed over time to become that.
Yeah.
Because at 28, he's writing the letters for Berkshire Hathaway still. It was just a very...
Well, for his partnership, but for his investors. It was even before Berkshire. It was a long time ago. But 100%. Yeah. Yes.
Because Berkshire Hathaway was originally manufacturing company.
And he bought that in like 1966.
Yeah. And then the manufacturing went by the wayside.
It ended up dying.
It cost it,
Shut it down.
Yeah. See, just in these conversations we've had, it made me realize how poor I am with the management of information in my head.
It's okay. You got it. Most people don't have that.
It's there. Yeah. It's like my address and filing system is really bad, though. And I was like, I could work on my addressing system.
Yeah. There's something to that whole practice idea, though. And it hints back to the conversation we had on irreverence, which is like, people look at smart people, astrophysicists, and the things that they can do when they can go on a board and solve really complex equations. They look at athletes, how they can move up and down a court or a field smoothly and gracefully. Mm-hmm. And then they go try to do it themselves and they can't do it. And they go, oh, well, that's not what I was meant to do, I guess.
Yeah.
And they end up fumbling through life, trying thing after thing after thing, not realizing that all it takes is practice and one dedicated practice to get there, you know?
Yes. So 2 pieces. Astrophysics. We did have a question. Someone questioning what your degree is really in, because he said there's no such thing as an astrophysics degree, which I don't think.
Well, he's wrong. It's a BS in astrophysics from the University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
It is. We'll post a picture. Let's post a picture on the Instagram.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just for him. That's fun.
That's funny. It's interesting that he says, is he from the South? Whoever it is, do you know who it was?
No.
Anonymous?
He's not anonymous. I mean, he has a username. It's actually on YouTube Shorts, interestingly enough. Shout out YouTube.
Well, he should go look for degrees. In the South, they don't have it a lot. Oklahoma is the only one that had an astrophysics program here in the South.
No astrophysics bachelor's degree. You either have a physics degree or some kind of astronomy degree. I've been through graduate level astrophysics and thermodynamics and all the undergrad core through quantum mechanics, all the math courses that entails. What you are doing is called humble bragging. I'm not smart. Please tell me. This is interesting. I want to talk about this as objectively as I can. In our podcast, we go over how scientists, when they're on camera or in a public forum, are incentivized to promote what they do.
Yes.
That's what this guy did, which is interesting. Yes. I feel like I have to assume from this piece of information that he did not actually watch the podcast and he only got this little piece of the short.
Probably.
Which, not reading a whole story usually leaves a lot of room for error when you respond.
It could, yeah. Leaves gaps.
As a person who shot down the idea and then follows up with his, like, a very short version of his resume, I was like, I think that's also humble bragging. If humble bragging is a thing, it's like, if I talk about my life and it just is and I'm just telling you the facts of it, it's not bragging. If you appreciate the things I've done or you think that those are accredited or noteworthy, it's like, that's just appreciation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I think it's interesting. The humble brag comment is very interesting. And when you said that, it struck me as like, I don't know. Is that the case? It's like I do like to portray so there's 2 elements to this, right? The physics archetype. the archetype that this guy probably is the type that likes to portray very logical, very reality-based, and more intelligent than those around them. They appeal to other authorities from things that they were told. It's just a lifestyle, I guess, if you will. And I don't think he's bragging when he says that that's me. He's just saying, hey, I identify as this kind of mind. Mm-hmm. I possibly could be bragging about a different type of mind, which is a more folksy, practical, down-to-earth type of wisdom that's like, hey, none of us are really that logical or book smart. We're all kind of silly and weird. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you why that silly and weird is better. And maybe there is a brag in that. I don't know. I guess there could be. But it is interesting. I mean, first and foremost, he's wrong on the astrophysics part. So that's just like a disqualifier there. Or she. I guess it could be a he or she. But very interesting. Getting some hate. Is that when you texted me and said we got some hate?
Yeah, I got some hate and some love.
I never got a picture of we got some hate.
You were in the mountains. It makes sense.
Yeah.
There's another one that was pretty much the opposite. This guy Zig was talking about a little short piece where you were talking about the veil that's painted around us whenever we're young, and
that we
don't necessarily get the encouragement that we're that helps build that confidence that makes us go stumble and try again.
Yeah.
This one really hit. I used to think exactly that's for this X kind of people, and I don't get girls because I'm not that guy that gets girls, and I'm not this, but I'm not that, and I'll never get a good job because being rich is for rich people and not me. And it's a pretty long message, but it was must have struck the dude enough to feel something inside. I was like, it's good.
Yeah.
Little affirmation
for
that guy that hey, you're not the only person that can get stuck in that. Or
mostly that gets me with women, not like dating women, but women in education. That gets me the most. I look at the women in my life, and all of them, if you hand them a sheet of Algebra 1, they'll be like, no, I was never good at math. I don't do math. Math's not for me. And women never get encouraged through STEM education, at least, or rarely get encouraged through STEM education that they are good enough to do it. They mostly get told, no, you're a girl, that's, go do marketing, go do whatever. And that's deeply unfair. And they get that more than anybody. But yeah, I'm glad that guy resonated with it too.
Yeah, totally. It did have a second person reach out to me. And it could be totally unrelated, but they came to me and actually asked for some kind of business, kind of life advice, and I never would have expected them to ask for it. And it just basically quoted Alex Hormozy in long form to him, which I also told him, I'll just go look at this guy. Probably get you where you need to go.
Yeah.
If I'm just someone you trust better to
point you in the right direction.
Point you in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll steer you there. He gives the example, which he gave from someone else, which is everyone looks for a golden bullet. Startups, most time in our lives, most time, workout plans, taking on a new hobby, learning a new instrument. They're like, there's a golden bullet. I'm going to follow one program and it's going to get me exactly where I need to get. And then in 90 days, I'm I have what I want and I'm done. And that's not it. It's not a bad thing to try those things. The issue comes up when it doesn't work out perfectly. You throw the entire process away and then you try a completely different one.
Yeah.
And he calls it the golden BBs. It's these companies got really big because they tried something and then they're like, let's try the process 5% different.
Yeah.
Let's change a small variable here, small variable there. And eventually all those little BBs chip away to make, take down the thing they want to take down.
But that's kind of good to great too. Good to great. They talk about shooting BBs at a bunch of objectives, and then whenever you get one that's a bullseye, shoot your cannon.
Okay.
Same concept though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Lots of different points. I think the concept of everybody looking for the shortcut is so interesting. And Charlie Munger has a really good, there's another apocryphal story. I've never actually seen it, but apparently somebody once stood up and asked Charlie Munger, hey, the world's different now. What do I have to do to get rich? And Charlie was like, it's kind of obvious how to get rich. What you're actually asking me is, how do I do what you did, but faster? And there is no way to do what I did, but faster. That's like the Quippy thing behind it. You know, and so that's what everybody's looking for, a way to do what somebody else great did, but do it faster and more effectively. And only very rarely does that happen. Most of the time, what you get succumbed into, and this is another, probably one of the just best quippy life advices that Warren Buffett's ever thrown out. And it wasn't even, I guess, that quippy. He said, you need to know the ways to be successful at life. You need to know the ways that people manipulate other people and resist the temptation to do it yourself. And oftentimes, the easiest way to manipulate people and derive value from them is to promise them something faster. That's what all of our new technology is built off of. Uber, right? Grubhub, anything that is like, hey, we'll get it to you, but faster. Even crypto, like, let's just transfer money, but faster. If you promise that, you can manipulate anybody into buying it, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And so I think that the problem with people chasing those golden BBs is that most of them are produced by people who are trying to manipulate you on purpose.
Just went to a pretty dark spot. I was thinking about gray area. Manipulation, by definition, means for man to put his hands on it, which
Okay.
it's not necessarily bad.
Nah, not really.
Although I think today we've definitely weaponized that term in order to say, like, I don't like what you're doing to me. You're manipulating me. It's like, well, yeah, I'm trying to work on you.
Yeah.
The original word for correct, like to correct somebody, was to convince them. So it's not a matter of just telling you what's wrong. It's like you to change their mind into what the thing should be.
It's much more subtle. It's a subtle change of mind for that. Yeah.
And you could say manipulation and convincing to me are pretty synonymous in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I need to put my mental hands on whatever your thought is and work it until you're like, oh, that was a little twisted up, wasn't it?
So is there an element of intention that makes one be convincing versus manipulation? The intention or the knowledge that what you're framing is not good or is not authentic?
This one gets hard to measure. Intention is absolutely important. When I was a kid, this is a really bad story. It's a really dumb story. I intended to learn what let's call it the resilience or the stability or the tensile strength of certain objects were in my parents' house by cutting them with scissors and seeing what I could and could not cut.
Heck yeah.
My intention was good. I just wanted to learn. The results was we had a TV that no longer worked. There was a giant
AC fried.
There was a giant hole in the back of the couch. I got a really stupid haircut from myself.
Nice.
A bunch of my toys lost limbs. And I mean, so my intention was good, but like bad result. And so that's why I say it becomes hard to measure manipulation versus the convincing, because I mean, synonyms mean like interchangeable, don't they? And so it's like, I mean, it's more of how you receive it.
Yeah.
Like brainwashing. I'd put it in the same category of debate where it's like, well, if my brain is really dirty, yeah, it needs some cleaning. But if I like however I think, I'm probably not going to like you cleaning me up.
Yeah.
It's not going to feel good. So,
dude, we're really diving into the world of the greatness of, or the greatness of the morality behind like our economic system even, right? Think about sales, okay?
Yeah.
So you're a salesman and I have to sell you on something. When I think of manipulation, that's what I think of. There are things that I'm going to do. I'm going to cause urgency. I'm going to point out extra problems. I'm going to not take no for an answer and regurgitate basically your, that's what I'm looking for. Your reasons for saying no, I'm going to regurgitate them at you and try and answer them and all these things, right? I'm manipulating you to get the sell so that I can make money. Is that intention bad? Probably, but what happens if I make money? Well, I can go feed my family. I can go spend money at the drugstore or the or the restaurant down the road or whatever, right? I can keep the economy around me alive.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it's almost like I have to manipulate you into getting something that you may or may not need so that I can keep this group alive. And then it's like, okay, so was that manipulation that I did good or bad? I don't know.
Exactly. Makes me think of, I've said this at least multiple times in my life, so I'll say it's one of my, call it an aphorism.
Yeah, heck yeah.
The good guy is usually a bad guy in someone else's story.
Yes, that's a good one.
And part of our storytelling is that it always has a perspective or a point of view that it operates from. Mm-hmm. And if you switch that point of view, it totally changes the story. So there is it's a Mastermind in Economics series, or Masterclass, excuse me, not Mastermind, by, what is his name? Paul Krugman.
Yeah, economist.
Yeah. And he gives the example of when people ask him, how do you fix our economy? He's like, it's not broken. It operates more so like a series of plungers that would be on a table, and if you push one down, another one comes up over here. And so it's not a matter of, fixing it or making it work better. It's like, what plungers do you want to be up and which ones do you want to be down? And as an economist, you're operating between those, where it's like, I drive the price of grain down, and then that means all of a sudden chicken farmers are now the plunger that goes up because they're making more money per chicken that they sell. Now, if I push the chickens down and they're in the hole, they're going to start charging more. And so all of a sudden you see Tyson's Food charging HEB more, and then everybody in the economy starts actually paying more for chicken. Yeah. So he's like, it's not a problem to solve. It's more about how do you want to manipulate or convince the system at that moment?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, kind of the same thing we're talking about here for life, where it's like, I'm like my own table of plungers here, and you're your own table of plungers, and sometimes in order to make this plunger I need to go up, I press yours down.
Yeah.
And it's
that is the definition, I would say a layman's definition of a complex system is what that is. And there's a few different complex systems. An economy is a complex system. Mm-hmm. Your body is a complex system, right? Same thing. A doctor is going to say, I'm going to give you medication to take care of that symptom. Push that plunger down. But what happens now? Your risk for this side effect goes up, or this. If you take a bunch of Tylenol for headaches, it's going to hurt your liver. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like there's always a give and take in a complex system. And what's so fascinating, I love complex systems, and we could do a whole podcast on those someday. But what's so fascinating is complex systems are not calculable. There's no way to know the right answer. They are also most fraught with people that we talked about last time, the do something syndrome people. Mm-hmm. Economists are do something syndrome people for sure, right? They can turn around and politicians, right? What Nassim Taleb says, it's easier to macro bullshit than the micro bullshit. And he hates macroeconomic people like Paul Krugman. Because oftentimes there's a lot of political leaning with whatever they're trying to say. But mostly they're like never right. They can never be right. The system's too complex. Whenever they say, because of some macroeconomic trend, politically we should lean this direction, something happens that's way out of their control that they don't understand, right? I think it wasn't Paul Krugman. I wish I could remember the name of the guy. There was a big famous economist who was working with the White House in 2007, walking around, stomping around. Oh no, we're great. The economy's great. Everything's awesome. And then it collapsed. Mm-hmm. And then he came out after it collapsed and was like, I called it. Right? There's no skin in the game for him or anything. Mm-hmm. They're just out there messing around in a complex system.
Yeah, back to the last episode where we were talking about, if you talk about ideas that are so big and complex and far out of your control, there's not really any risk.
Yeah.
If it goes right, you're like, I'm right. If it goes wrong, you're like, Yeah, I didn't listen.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yes.
Fascinating.
So complex systems are fascinating, man. And really what it is it's the idea that 1 and 1 equals 3. That all of the parts in the system make up something different than the sum of the parts, if you will. A good example I used to always use, and it's not so, I guess it doesn't really resonate with people so well, but like ants. If you take an ant, strong, it can do some things. But intuitively, you wouldn't think, okay, if I take 1,000 ants, they can build a bridge across a river. Or 1,000,000 ants, they can build a bridge for themselves across a river.
Yeah.
But they can. Like when you take a bunch of ants together, fire ants, people show these things, right? Them making bridges and stuff. Mm-hmm. When you take a bunch of them together, they can become things that are not the sum of the parts. They become something different. That's the emergence. That's what a complex system is. That's what an economy is.
Mm-hmm. That's what we are.
It's what we are. It is.
Yeah.
It's what socially we are. It's what it's.
I think it's how our brain
internally
operates.
It is how our brain is a complex system. Why do they have so much trouble figuring out how our brain works?
Complex answer.
I think it's funny. I hope that our fan here, the science fan, comes back. My favorite thing is people who believe that more computation, more AI will solve some of these really hard problems that we have, and they don't consider that there are unsolvable problems, complex systems that are not solvable. They just haven't dived deep enough into the complexity theory to get it. They're too logically minded. They think everything can be solved. It can't.
I do not think that way. I know that much. I'm like,
Yeah.
I got 2 levels of that. One level is, that's too hard, and level 2 is, yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
This whole, I'm going to jump back a little bit. There's going to be stories in our lives where we end up being the bad guy.
Yeah.
In the story. Interestingly enough, there's a section in the Bible, and I'm going to paraphrase really abruptly. One of the disciples goes to Jesus, and he calls him good teacher. Jesus goes, whoa, I'm not good. Now you can look at my works and say those good. You can look at the words that come out of my mouth and call those good. And you can look at the way that I've changed people and call those good. Not me. Which is interesting. Son of God. It's like, don't call me a good guy.
Well, he was obviously the bad guy in somebody's story. Look at the Pharisees.
Yeah, all the Pharisees.
Right?
He was the bad guy in that story.
They did. To
the Roman Empire, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
If you read their stories, that's bad guy. And that's part of the storytelling. I think we get caught up in is like our story, that piece of the story is the whole story. That's not.
Yeah. We also want to hide from confrontation. I think another Taleb quote, life is more fun with a nemesis. That's what he says. Life is more fun with a nemesis. If you look at anybody that has done something big, that has been great, that has had their ideas, their distribution out there, I think all of them have a nemesis. They all have somebody that they could point out and be like, yeah, that's a nemesis. That's a guy that was my villain. And that's easy to flip the script. So it's possible to not be a villain in somebody else's story, but you'll also never be a hero. I think.
Agreed. We also, well, I see this often, and this is one of my issues, is that I didn't like the idea of being a bad guy in other people's stories. I didn't like that idea.
Felt bad about it or what?
I felt like it was wrong for me to ever be the bad guy in someone else's story. But it's not true. Well, I think it's not that it's not true, it's that it's untrue and it's an unproductive way of life.
So hold on, take a step back. So are you uncomfortable with the very possible fact that somebody who is watching this clip right now doesn't like you?
Not anymore.
Used to be.
I'm saying that's a huge limiting factor, though, to life. And I absolutely know people, there's people that come to my front lobe right here whenever I say that. But I'm like, they can't do it. They can't accept it. They can't even deal with the moment. Like, it goes so far that the moments where they weren't that good guy in the story, they can't even go back to those moments. They can't even spend time there. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, now all of a sudden your story in your head's really incomplete and obstructed and redacted like a really obscure CIA file or something. And it's like, well, that makes no sense. Yeah.
How do you get there? How do you think they get there?
You want to be the hero. It's the same, like a do something syndrome. There's the hero syndrome all over the place.
Yeah.
Where
man with a cape.
Man with a cape.
Everybody likes the hero's story.
Although a lot of the heroes in movies, they don't realize like their whole family's constantly at risk. They have no personal life. They're constantly unhappy and having a hard time. Like they have super high highs, super low lows.
Yeah.
You forget all that part in the middle. They're just like, oh, no, everyone looks at them like, yeah, if only I could do that. It's like,
I don't know, man.
I don't know. That looks it's pretty detrimental.
It's a very interesting point that most of the time, what is it Dan said? Or it was Phil or Dan that struck with me so much. They were like, if you're producing fruit, people are taking it from you. You're not the one getting the fruit. If you think you're producing joy and patience and peace and all of that,
that's for other people.
Look at other people are taking that from you, not the other way around. And so that's what the true hero is, right? If you want to shed light around you, you have to absorb the darkness. Like that's the only way to get the light out.
No tree eats its own fruit.
No tree eats its own fruit. That's it. Yeah. So it's very interesting. I think that's a characteristic of the hero that people don't think about, which is like, and so maybe that's why a hero has to be a villain in somebody else's story too, right? That's just eating up more of the downside.
Yeah. I think like the Sandman and Spider-Man is what comes to mind. I don't remember the exact details of his story. I do remember what he was doing in a general sense was because like he had a daughter that was really sick or something, and he was just trying to do whatever he could to be the hero for his daughter. And if that meant fighting Spider-Man, who we're all like, Spider-Man hero, it's like, he's like, Spider-Man's in my way.
Yeah.
Saving my daughter. You're like, oh.
It goes back to who deserves respect too. So way back in the day, this is more Taleb, skin in the game Taleb. Okay. Way back in the day, kings were kings because they rode out in the front of the army, right? Leaders were out on the front lines going to war for what they believed in. Nowadays, we have politicians who sit in a room and send other people out, right? Skin in the game is where you earn that respect. The architect earns the respect for building the bridge only after he slept under it. It's a element of putting yourself in danger for what you believe in that makes you great. And that's honestly kind of what, I'm glad we reviewed some of this podcast because that's what this podcast is, right? We have to put ourselves out there to get comments from random haters on YouTube if we're ever going to do anything great. Like that's right now what we're practicing is putting something out and welcoming the punches because that's the only way to make it, to do anything good.
Yeah.
That's the hero talk, I guess.
That's it. Yeah.
So do you see yourself as a hero?
No. I'd like to think so. Really interesting one, and Dad, sorry for this one. My brother had his wedding in Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful plantation, right on the edge of the bayou. When the ring bearer brought the rings out, my brother's ring fell off the pillow.
Into the water?
Onto the porch, through a crack, and into the bayou below. I went under there, trying to find his ring in the rocks and the mud while I'm in a suit. My dad's cheering me on, like, come on, boy, be the hero. I'm not sure there would really be anything heroic about me finding that ring underneath the bayou. I'm like, 11 years old trumping around in a suit.
Yeah.
May I have had fun? Maybe. Could have been an all right thing? Yeah. I didn't find it.
So, you didn't win.
Yeah, I didn't win. Like, but so constantly trying to do things that probably aren't that important is where the hero complex gets in the way.
Yeah.
If you're spending extra time trying to fix things or save things that shouldn't be saved, or don't need to be saved, or like have no consequences for not being saved.
It's like the unimportant hero.
Almost. The unimportant hero.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side, because I always like to look at both sides of the story, I might have just had fun, and I like to, my love language is serving people. I may have just wanted to do it for my brother. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Something about this whole hero complex thing. Oh, it's so good, and I so lost it. Oh well.
The hero complex. I think for myself, it's interesting. I think everybody, at least, I would say almost everybody, is internally wired to want to be great.
Yeah.
At whatever it is they do or however it is, they want to be great. They're the hero in their own story, right? They want to triumph over trial and do something great. And I can say, at least for myself, I definitely used to see myself as like, I'm going to be the hero, for sure. That was maybe 2019, right? Maybe when I started Emerging Oaks, I'm like, I'm going to be the hero. This is it. This is my superpower. I'm going to go save the world now. It wasn't until after getting beat to hell as an entrepreneur and having to mow grass and deliver pizzas that I learned and maybe I learned too far in the opposite direction. I think it's funny this guy's talking about humble brags. There's a humble brag. I've had to mow grass and deliver pizzas as an adult. But there's something about it that beats you up so much in the opposite direction that you believe there's no way I could ever be a hero. And I think that's a harder tunnel to dig out of than to get beat down from the hero side. And it took a long time to dig out of that tunnel. So it's interesting. I don't think I see myself as the hero yet, but at least I've traveled a path. I've traveled an interesting path for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been there. I've always thought, that's where I want to be.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's interesting. I think that everybody should be striving to be great. But I think, first off, you can get lost in it. You can strive to be great at something that's not important, right? You could become the world's greatest ring finder in muddy water, and that'd be good for you. So it is important to know what you want to be great in. But yeah, the hero complex. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know if it's a actual complex or if it's just natural.
Let's talk about the other side. The villain side. So I think there's definitely people that also have stories where they gravitate so much to how they were the bad person in that situation. And they
only focus on that.
They're so ridden with guilt and shame that they never think there's any redemption story for them.
That's getting lost on the downside of it.
Yeah, that's the hole.
That is a hole.
And it also, I'll take it back to the thing where Jesus is like, I'm not a good guy.
Yeah.
It's like, we're neither good nor bad people. We are people that will do good and bad things throughout our life, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It's a consequence of, like I said, good intentions can still have bad results.
Yep.
And so trying to do good things, we will do bad things. Trying to do good things, we'll do good things. Trying to do bad things, we can do good things too.
You're only failing by doing nothing.
Yeah.
I think. What's also interesting about that is people always weigh the outcomes, not the inputs, right? You can be ridden with guilt for something that happened. I've been there, dude. I've lost money for people, right?
Yeah.
I lose money for people and I'm ridden with guilt. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst. Like, it just feels awful. I can't judge it by the outputs. If you look at the inputs made sense. Things seemed right. It looked like the right thing to do. And oftentimes people get stuck in the outputs. They feel guilty about the outputs, and that keeps them from moving again. And that's where you stop the story, right? You were talking about how you can do things good, you can do things bad. You're only failing when you're not doing, not practicing.
Mm-hmm. Which is pretty interesting.
It is. It is. And that's I've talked with someone before who suffered from depression. And I can't pretend to get it. I don't get it, right? I haven't ever had it. I haven't been medicated for it or anything, but I've talked with someone who did. And the most interesting thing that I learned was it wasn't about feeling sad all the time. It was about feeling nothing all the time.
Mm. Yes.
And the inability to move and the inability to take action. That is being stuck in that rut.
Yeah. It's like the opposite of love is not hate. It's apathy.
Yeah.
Just nothing.
Yeah.
In part, I would attribute depression to science.
Interesting.
And the logic that's built into our brains through school says, if the data says when you do things, bad things happen, then the chart would immediately say, stop doing things.
Yeah.
That's what all the data would tell you.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is if you'll never then collect enough data to say, oh, yeah, things you do good.
Oh, it's so true. What you just leaned at is huge.
Like the data issue there is amazing, which also, happens so many places in our world. Data makes whatever the person wants to. Let's say there's three different ways that this happens. So lawyers make words say whatever their employer wants them to. Accountants and CPAs make numbers say whatever their employer wants to. And then scientists make whatever their funders say
they need it to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like data, it's like there's multiple ways to interpret that. Strangely enough, if like you do go through a series of failures, the data says stop doing things.
Yep.
That would be safer and better for you.
Yep.
Undeniably. There's even, I'm gonna quote 3 times, Alex, here you go. He says, he's like, I think confidence is built on top of an insurmountable pile of evidence of you doing things.
Yeah,
completing that.
That's fair.
And it's like, okay, well, that's a data issue. That's a data thing, right?
It is, and it can go the opposite direction, too.
It can go the opposite. So if confidence, so it's like to completely eradicate confidence, just build a giant pile of failure.
Yeah.
However, if I stood on top of my failures, I'd be a lot taller and I'd see different things. So, see?
It's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I think we should start there for next week's episode because there's an interesting conversation about the science there and the way we're trained to do science that I think you're nailing.
That's cool. Yeah, we can shut it down.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Cool, man. Get out of here.
Wow.
Wow.